that what life is essentially is not a place to attain happiness or even to aim for happiness, even though you should be grateful if some comes along now and then, but a call to something like adventure. And I think that's the proper way of conceptualizing it. Certainly, if you go watch a story, a movie, you read a book, something like that, if you encounter a narrative that's gripping, whether it's a romance or a classic adventure story, then the element of it that's gripping is the adventure. And so to portray life as an adventure in romance and in the world is the proper way to portray it. And the way that you facilitate the adventure is through encouragement. I had a client once, I really liked him. He was a good guy, he was a smart guy, good looking young guy, had everything going for him, you know. He was a good musician, he was a talented athlete, but he hadn't been encouraged, I wouldn't say. He told me about his relationship with his girlfriend. He said his girlfriend wanted to go biking around southern Ontario. She was about 19 or 20, and he thought he might join her. And when she went and talked to her parents, they made every provision possible to help her prepare for the journey, to make sure her bike was in good shape, to make sure she had the right equipment, to help her plot out a route. And when he went and talked to his parents, all they did was worry that he was going to get hurt. And like, he might get hurt, because people get hurt. But they didn't understand that they were choosing between the hurt that he might encounter by going out in the world and having an adventure, let's say with his girlfriend, or the hurt that he would encounter by staying at home, cowering in his basement under the protection of his over-loving parents, while his girlfriend ventured bravely into the world. You think, well, which of those two things is most likely to be damaging? And the answer to that is, well, his parents wouldn't worry as much as if he was in the basement. And that's the wrong worry even, because they should worry more, not less. So in Rule 12 is pet a cat when you encounter one on the street. And it's oddly enough, a meditation on fragility. It's a discussion of what you do when you don't know what to do, and that's really when things have gone badly for you, when you face a terrible tragedy in your own personal life or in your familial life, or perhaps even in the life of your community, when things come crowding in at you too quickly. In the case of a death in the family, or a terrible illness, or the collapse of a dream, or any of the things that can flip your world upside down, is how do you cope with that? And that chapter contains discussion of the necessity of narrowing your time frame, you know, because sometimes the right way to look at the world is across years, and sometimes it's across months, and when things are more out of control, perhaps it's across days, and when things are really, when you're really up against the wall, it's across hours or even minutes. And during those minutes, then you concentrate on doing as well as you can with what's right in front of you for the longest unit of time that you can tolerate conceptualizing. Maybe that's what you do at someone's deathbed, and while you're doing that and suffering away madly, then you also take the time to appreciate everything you can that manifests itself, that allows itself to be appreciated. And so that's the metaphor of the cat, I suppose. And so that's the 12 rules. And I'll return to rule 1, which is stand up straight with your shoulders back, and I'm going to use it as a platform for laying out the abstractions that I talked to at the beginning of the lecture. So some of you might be familiar with the central Taoist symbol, and it's a symbol of Tao. And Tao is a very strange word. It doesn't have an easily translatable single meaning, at least in English. It means a variety of things. It means the path of life. So that would mean the path that you take as you move forward through life. But it would mean more also the proper path. So it's the proper path through life. So the idea, Tao is a symbol of reality. And one of the things it means is the path you take through life. And so there's an implicit idea there that the fundamental reality of life is the path you take through life. It's not a materialist idea. It's a different kind of idea. It's the idea that life is a journey. Well, we're mobile creatures and we're on a journey, and the best way to conceptualize reality is as the place that you journey through. And the question is, well, what are the elements What are the constituent elements of the place that you journey through? Because that's also part of Tao, and the Taoists believe that that's yin and yang. And yin is the black serpent, because those are two serpents head to head that make up the totality of the world. And the black serpent is yin, and yin is feminine, classically speaking, from the Taoist perspective. It's a symbolic representation. It doesn't mean that women are yin and that men aren't. It's not that. It's an attempt to use sexual symbolism to represent a deeper underlying reality. And yang is masculine. Yin is dark and night. And there's a white dot in the black serpent, and there's a black dot in the white serpent. The white serpent is the daytime and masculinity. And it's the interplay between those two things that make up reality. And one can transform into the other at any moment. And so that's the Taoist idea of reality. And so there's yin and yang, and they make up the world. And the question is, perhaps our question is, well, what exactly does that mean? Well, it actually means something. It's a kind of abstraction. And it's actually an incredibly helpful abstraction once you understand the abstraction. It might be the most real abstraction there is. So I'm going to lay out for you a little bit about what these two domains refer to. And then I'm going to make a case that they're real. And then I'm going to tell you what it means that they're real. So you could think of yin as chaos. Now we need to know what chaos is. Now, chaos is what God made the world out of at the beginning of time. So one of the things that chaos is it's something like potential. And so you can imagine, and this is not how we think as modern people, because we tend to think in a materialist way, but it is how we act. And as I said already, you act as if you confront potential. And you treat potential as if it's real, and if your attitude towards it confers on you a certain moral obligation, which is why you know what people mean when they say you're not living up to your potential. No one ever says, well, what do you mean by potential? Not unless they're being argumentative, because you already know. And very few people say, well, I'm fully living up to my potential. So you admit to the reality that undergirds that the conception that makes that question a possibility immediately. The potential is, well, potential is the future. That's part of it. And we believe in the future. We believe that it exists, even though it isn't here and it's not measurable. It only exists as a potential set of realizable possibilities. That's what the future is. And it's really what we contend with. We don't really contend with the present precisely. We orient ourselves towards the future, and the future comes at us from every direction. And we decide as we encounter the future which parts of it we're going to interact with and how we're going to construct the present and the past as a consequence of doing that. And so part of chaos is potential, and that's the positive part. It's like if you're in a bind, what you look for is potential. Is there another way of conceptualizing this? Do I have a different way of acting? Can I make another plan? Is there something that I'm not taking into account that would make this terrible situation tolerable? That's all an attempt to call upon potential and to use it to transfigure a reality that's intolerable. And maybe it's intolerable because of the way you're conceptualizing it. Now, I'm not being naive about that. I understand perfectly well that people can find themselves so badly cornered in life that they're basically done no matter what they do. People obviously develop fatal illnesses and they die and their businesses collapse, and genuinely terrible things can happen to you that aren't your fault, that you can't fix. I'm not saying that you can just gerrymander the world by changing your attitude. It's not that straightforward. But I am saying that you have a tremendous ability to transform the landscape of possibility that reveals itself in front of you, and that when things are terrible, that's your best bet. It doesn't mean it will succeed. It just means you don't have a better option. And so chaos, that potential, is also something that manifests itself in a terrible manner. So imagine this. This is a good way of thinking about it. So imagine that you have an intimate relationship. Let's say a marriage. And the marriage is predicated on trust and fidelity, which is a variant of trust. And that the trust and fidelity is an axiom of your memories.